أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وإذ أخذ ربك من بني آدم من ظهورهم ذريتهم وأشهدهم على أنفسهم ألست بربكم قالوا بلى شهدنا أن تقولوا يوم القيامة إنا كنا عن هذا غافلين. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمصابنا بالحسين عليه السلام وجعلنا وإياكم من الطالبين بثاره مع إمام المهدي عليه السلام إن شاء الله. أوصيكم عباد الله بتقوى الله وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. As we said we were in different worlds before coming to this world, and we will be continuing our journey to eternity. The world that we started was Alam al-Dhar, and we tried to find out what happened after Alam al-Dhar, and we mentioned that there is a terminology in Quran that it says that we were created from turab. Translating turab as soil or mud or anything similar to that, it's something that can be confusing for somebody who does not understand what that is implying. We said that one theory of explaining of the meaning of turab, instead of what traditionally some have said, for example, what they usually say is that as if Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala made a statue, so it took some soil, made a statue with mixing that soil with some water, for example, and that statue became like something that looks like a doll of a human. And then he blew into that some life or soul, and that became a real person. The problem with this sort of explanation we had was, first of all, it's not what we can see nowadays with creation of a new baby, for example. We know that's not what happens. We know that the babies in the uterus, they grow, and they are small cells, and those cells will grow and become a fetus, and then the baby. Also, we said if that was the case just for Adam alayhi salam, how come Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala has mentioned in Quran that Allah created all of us? He says, هُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَكُم مِّن تُرَابٍ. And then after that says, ثُمَّ مِن نُطْفَةٍ ثُمَّ مِن عَلَقَةٍ. So Allah is referring to all of us as human, that we all were created from turab. And this is not just limited to Adam alayhi salam. Okay, so one may say that is because of Adam alayhi salam being from turab and we are from his generations. That's what Allah is trying to say. And that's something that we can consider. Also, to explain that we are from turab, they say that what is found on earth and what is found in our body, they can be compared, and we see everything in our body exists on earth. So what we would say is that that's true, but so is the case with everything else on earth. And just saying that we live on earth and we eat from what is on earth can conclude that we are getting those things in our body. And the other problem with this was that if we are considering that our body is made from those things that belong to the earth, then who was there at the time before coming to this world? Because Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala says that before nutfa, before being the cells that would shape into, for example, an egg or the sperm, and they shape to a cell that is the first cell of, for example, human being. Before that, we were turab. And the question that was there again with that is, with the turab, is that who was giving this promise to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala in Alam al-Dhar? Was it just our soul? And our soul was on a particular seat or a particular body, or was the turab itself? Because that's where the creation, the khalq starts. هو الذي خلقكم من تراب. And in the ayah that we just recited, Allah Ta'ala says was at the time that people gave witness. They were the witnesses against themselves to make sure that one day they do not say that we didn't know. And also we gave the example of Isa alayhi salam when Quran says inna mathala Isa, that indeed the creation of Isa alayhi salam, because they were asking how is possible for Isa to be created without father. Allah says is kamathali Adam khalaqahu min turab, is like the example of Adam that was created from turab. Well, we know that Maryam salamullah alayha did not have any soil in her body to be turned to a baby. We say that it was a baby that created in the uterus of Maryam salamullah alayha. Of course, Allah can say that He creates from nothing, and that's definitely the case. Allah can create and would create from nothing. But that's not what He says in this ayah, is making this simile between Adam and Isa, that Adam was created from turab. So what we're trying to conclude from this theory, explaining the meaning of turab, is that turab being the soil could be the small particles of anything. And what we find with these small particles, that the alam al-dhar, that they could record information, and then that information will stay with us for the rest of our life. And that information is the one that Allah says, for example, in the day of judgment, for resurrection, Allah will recreate us based on that information. But an example of that would be our fingerprints that we mentioned, that in the Quran says, بَلَا قَادِرِينَ عَلَىٰ أَن نُسَوِّيَ بَنَانَهُ. And we know the fingerprints are unique for everybody. And all of that shows that what is dictated uniquely for everybody. And at the same time, we can share certain information with others. That's our genes. That's the DNA that shapes into chromosome, and what is on it, the sequences, the differences would make genes. And there are certain genes that are fixed for human. So we can say that turab, small particles of something else, and if we look on the microscope at DNA, we see that there are small particles exactly like soil. So this theory would say that it was our DNA that Allah Ta'ala created. And also we know that based on our belief, Allah Ta'ala created Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam before anybody else. And there was example in Riwayah and in Quran. The Riwayah, the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, كنت نبيا وآدم بين الماء والطين. That I was a prophet, even Adam was not created properly. Or the ayah of Quran that speaks about the covenants of the prophets, وَإِذْ أَخَذْنَا مِنَ النَّبِيِّينَ مِيثَاقَهُم. We took that covenant from the prophets. And then here you expect that if Allah is giving examples of these prophets, if they are in order, it should be different way. But it says وَمِنْكَ, first Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and then it says وَمِنْ نُوحٍ وَإِبْرَاهِيمَ وَمُوسَى وَعِيسَى ibn Maryam. While if you look at the order, everybody is in order apart from Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam being first. This is because he was created first, and the riwayah that we said first was a conclusion of that, and it's confirming that. So Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala creates human, and they all share the same information, and inside us there is an information wired to say that Allah exists. He is our only nurturer, He is our only creator, and He is independent, and we all in need of Him. These are all information and lots of other information that is inside us. Even we can argue that certain information, for example, regarding finding something beautiful, or information about mathematics, that we all share the same information, we confirm it, they're all inside us. We refer to this in the Islamic text as fitrah. In ayah Quran says, فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا. And when Quran says that this fitrah, this programming, this sort of information wired in human, is the same one that Allah has created human based on that, which says عَلَيْهَا فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا. So it's based on that Allah has created. In the riwayah of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, هِيَ الْإِسْلَامِ. This fitrah is Islam, is our submission. That in the ayah, in the alam al-dhar, when we said, Allah said, Alastu bi rabbikum, Imam alayhi salam said that was the fitrah. And in this one, وَفِيهِ الْمُؤْمِنُ وَالْكَافِرُ. In this one, both mu'min and kafir existed. Which means that anybody changes, it would be later on. So we could argue, how is it possible, if something is in our genes and we all share, why some people become mu'min and some people kafir? The question can be raised for any other genetic code in us. For example, we know that there is a gene that the people who smoke, some of them share that gene, and this gene is the gene of smokers. But at the same time, we know that there are lots of people who are not smokers and they have the same gene. And there are people who are smokers but they don't have that gene. That means the environmental factors, the effect of what is around us, is very important. For showing a gene in our action and in our life, what would be the manifest of that is not necessarily just dependent on the gene, but the environmental factors are involved as well. Of course, if the factors, the external factors are so much and so strong and for such a long time, the genetic science says that it's possible for the genes to mutate and change. But the soul of people who have covered this covenant from Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala that we are supposed to worship Allah, the soul can actually prevent that. So in Quran says, في قلوبهم مرض. In their hearts, we're talking about the souls of these people, there is a disease. And this disease can prevent the manifestation of that gene in us. And the genetics has proved that human, in fact, does have a gene for worshipping. This was found because of the fact that if they find human remains or paintings or anything that the human showed from thousands and thousands of years, as long as human history has gone and we have information, there has been always a type of worshipping. Everybody is trying to worship something. And that itself shows that we are genetically wired to do so. The other thing that we can say about in this theory of explaining Turab, we can say that in Quran, when it says there was a time that human did exist, but it was لم يكن شيئا مذكورا. It was some sort of existence that is not being mentioned. This can be DNA itself as well, the time that we were at that level of existence, that it has not been mentioned maybe until recently. In less than 100 years ago, these theories came up. And then became an information and proved by the technology that this is how we are. Also, I think we have mentioned this, that Adam alayhi salam saw his descendants, and Allah showed him, and he said, wow, there are so many of my descendants. And this was shown as particles, as small pieces, dhar, that Allah Ta'ala says, look, unzur madha tara, see what you see, to Adam. And Adam alayhi salam looked and saw that there are so many of his descendants, the Bani Adam. And he showed them, he says that in the Riwayah says that it was actually so many that they covered the sky as if there's a big screen. And this wahum dharrun, they were small particles. And that again does match with this information that we found. So the next ayah of the Alam al-Dhar, it says another reason. If you remember the first ayah, the Alam al-Dhar, when Allah took the covenant, says وَإِذْ أَخَذَ رَبُّكَ مِنْ بَنِي آدَمَ مِنْ ظُهُورِهِمْ ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ. When Allah took this covenant, and then it says وَأَشْهَدَهُمْ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ قَالُوا أَلَسْتُ بِرَبِّكُمْ قَالُوا بَلَى شَهِدْنَا. And then it says Allah Ta'ala, the reason for this, أَن تَقُولُوا يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ إِنَّا كُنَّا عَنْ هَذَا غَافِلِينَ. So one reason, the first reason is that Allah took this promise from human, is that they do not say in the day of judgment that we didn't know about this, we were ignorant of this. No, Allah has put it inside you. You know that you have to worship Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. The second reason is been mentioned in the next ayah. And this ayah itself confirms the theory that we said about Turab. It says, أَوْ تَقُولُ. So one was that they say they were ignorant of this and they did not know about it. The second is that أَوْ تَقُولُ إِنَّمَا أَشْرَكَ آبَاؤُنَا. The reason we became mushrikeen, we did not worship Allah, is because our fathers worshipped and anybody but Allah, or they did shirk, they were polytheists. أشرك آباؤنا من قبل, before us. وَكُنَّا ذُرِّيَّةً مِّن بَعْدِهِمْ, and we are the descendants of them. أَفَتُهْلِكُنَا بِمَا فَعَلَ الْمُبْطِلُونَ. You are punishing us for the sake of what they did. So as if they are making an excuse, a genetic excuse, saying that, you know why we became polytheists? Because our fathers were like that, and this is in our genes. But Allah Ta'ala says, no, we took this promise from everybody, from all Bani Adam. The coding that is for creation of human, this is been inside you since you were created and is still there. And it looks like this is a type of coding that we cannot take it away from human. You know, certain codings in our genetics, they cannot even have mutation, because if they do have, then human is not human anymore. So this looks like one of them that is fixed in us. So they cannot bring an excuse to say that we were genetically wired like this. Look at our fathers, they did it. Allah Ta'ala says, no, your fathers did the wrong thing because they chose to. They went against what was inside them. Also, we know that at the time of resurrection, Allah Ta'ala needs to gather us, gathering us on a new planet, on a new place that we said that will be created. How is it possible that Allah will create exactly like us, but in a new place? And that's exactly what DNA does. So if you got the coding for anybody, then you can create exactly the same people, but with different conditions. So our body can have different conditions based on the same code, because this condition that we were created here, for example, we have the because we were in the world of uterus, we have something called belly button, and the belly button is where the actual umbilical cord was. This is because we went through the world of uterus. We went through rahim to come to this world. The world of uterus needed feeding through umbilical cord. And in the new world, that if we are created in a different way, then we may not have the umbilical cord and the belly button. So there may be differences in our body based on the creation, but all of that is based on the code, the genetic code, and that genetic code would tell others who we are, so we can actually somehow recognize each other. And the genetic code can, in the creation, it can actually have changed. So we can have changed ourselves so much in a way that in the new world, we will be created, even though it's the same genetic code, but certain areas in our existence would change so much, like mutation, or change so much that some people may look differently. So it's the same genetic code, but we can influence it. For example, based on the deeds, they may look much better, they may look more beautiful, or they may look like animals. And that's the same person, is the same genetic code, but certain areas have changed, like a mutation, for example, in a way that when we are created, some people may look like other animals. And that's when Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala speaks about the truth of our deeds and how these things will become a reality in the next world. And that's, inshallah, we'll explain those things a little bit more in future worlds that we're going to discuss. This way we can explain the type of resurrection, and they say that a person may become another person, or some changes after resurrection, and that is what they say mahshur, or a person becomes mahshur in the world of hashr, which means that those particles, or the DNA, whatever we consider, when that's gathered, there will be a different type of coding in certain things, and that's due to the reality of our deeds. The reality of our deeds will change to something else in the hereafter. The next world that we are in is the world of gametes, or nutfa, or those cells that would create a human. In this world as well, there will be effects that they come through against soul, because as we said, our soul is the one that feels everything in reality, and the body is something that the soul is sitting on it, or is in it, however you want to word it. But the truth is that the same soul that existed in Alam al-Dhar, the same soul would continue in different worlds. So even in the world of Nutfa, there is a soul. So that means that the effect of what the parents do, for example, we got rules regarding when somebody has been created, and the parents, if they do anything, or events around the time that the person was created, can affect them, because there's still a type of soul there that this soul can get effect. But of course, when the world, the life becomes more advanced, for example, in dunya, the effect is much more than the effect that you have in the world of gametes, or the world of uterus. And after that, we go to the world of uterus, and there We know that there are things that even medically proven that a baby, because there are cells getting developed, and the soul itself has been joining the body at this stage, and the changes that may happen during the pregnancy can affect this person later on. We know that in this very sensitive period of time, if there are changes, that may stay for the rest of that person's life. And Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a riwayah says that try to raise your children from the time of uterus, and give them discipline from the time of uterus. And somebody asked, so how is it possible? So Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Addibu awladakum fi butun ummahatihim." And then they say, well, how is it possible? So, وَكَيْفَ ذَلِكَ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. Then Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, بِإِطْعَامِهِمِ الْحَلَالِ. So by giving them halal food, for example. So halal food going to the mother's body, and then from that is transferring to the baby. That's one of the way of explaining this. Also, that means that if you are, for example, playing a music that is haram, that can affect the fetus. And this is something that we know, that the fetus does respond to the noises around itself. And also the music, for example, is one of them. So if the music is haram, even from that time can affect the fetus, or other things that are happening and potentially can change the life of that baby for the rest of the life on this world, and sometimes even affecting their life for the worlds to come after death. It's recommended to recite Quran and certain dua when you are one is pregnant, and when there's a baby, you can recite these things for the baby even in the uterus, in the fetus, before even coming out. And this is the result of the true meaning of the a'mal, of the deeds that we have, the same way that the haqiqah, or the true meaning of those things in this world, can affect us, and that can stay for the worlds to come. So inshallah, we will continue with the information regarding this world next time. So we enter the world of dunya. We are commemorating the third day of Muharram, and traditionally we dedicate this day to the young daughter of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, who was about 3 or 4 years old at the events of Karbala. Imam alayhi salam was going to go to the battlefield, and this daughter was very dependent on her father. As we know, daughters are usually very fond of their fathers, and seeing all the scenes of murders and the torture and the after that being a prisoner, all the difficulties that went through the family of Imam Hussein alayhi salam went through, this young girl went through as well. Particularly things like, for example, the shahada of her little brother Ali al-Asghar, Abdullah al-Radi, or in some narrations, this little baby being killed, for example, and lots of other her brothers got killed, Ali al-Akbar, her cousins like Qasim, Abdullah, all the people around her got killed. She was tortured. She was under the torture of the Zalimin, the oppressors, of the army of Umar Sa'd, and after that going to eventually getting to the palace of Yazid La'natullah alayh. At that time, everybody was, of course, trying to stay calm as much as possible. But in this situation, this little daughter could not stay quiet, and she started crying and asking for her father. And the Mal'un Yazid ordered to bring her the head of her father, and then she started talking to her father that this itself shows the difficulty that she was going through. She started saying, Ya abata, ya abata, oh my father, man dha alladhi qata'a waridak, oh my father, who cut your veins? Ya abata, man dha alladhi khadabaka bidima'ik, oh father, who is the one that covered your face with your blood? Ya abata, man baqiya ba'duka narjuh, who is after you've gone, who is there for us to be helpful, and we will be helpful to no one. Ya abata, man dha alladhi aytamani ala sighar sinni, oh my father, who made me orphan at such a young age, who is there for me until I grow. فعلى الأطائب من أهل بيت محمد وعلي صلى الله عليهما وآلهما فليبكي الباكون وإياهم فليندب النادبون. Today was Friday and we all recited Dua Nutbah. Let's cry with our Imam alayhi salam. وَلِمِثْلِهِمْ فَلْتَذْرِفِ الدَّمُوعُ وَلْيَصْرُخِ الصَّارِخُونَ وَيَضِجَّ الضَّاجُّونَ وَيَعِجَّ الْعَاجُّونَ. أين الحسن أين الحسين أين أبناء الحسين؟ صالح بعد صالح وصادق بعد صادق. أين السبيل بعد السبيل؟ أين الخيرة بعد الخيرة؟ لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.